Hey guys, Ruggles here, and today I am back with some very exciting news. Konami decided to sponsor the video and give us the opportunity to present to you a brand new world premiere archetype coming out in Phantom Rage November 6th. The new archetype is called Myutant, and while the TCG normally receives its exclusives over multiple sets, this time we're very lucky and we're actually getting 14 cards in Phantom Rage. So there are a myriad to talk about, but let's start with the starters, which include Myutant M-05 and ST-46. Like most great starters in the game, they are searchers. M-05 searches monsters, while ST-46 searches spells and traps. That's not all they do though. You can tribute them and banish a card from your hand or field to special summon one of 3 larger mutants from your hand or deck. Which you summon will depend on which type of card you banish. Banishing a monster lets you summon Beast, a spell, Mist, and a trap will allow you access to Arsenal. Those are the big boys, so let's talk about them. Mutant Beast is a level 8 Earth Beast with 2400 attack that can't be targeted by monster effects. It also has a number of once per turn effects, the first being that when your opponent activates a spell card or effect, you can banish one card from your hand or field to negate that activation, then banish the spell. It's also worth noting that if it's destroyed by an opponent's card, you can target one banished mutant trap and add it back to your hand. You're actually going to do a lot of banishing, so the niche pluses actually will come in handy. And that said, let's talk about Mist and Arsenal. Mutant Mist is a wind spellcaster with 2700 attack, it can't be targeted by spells, and if your opponent activates a trap card, you can chain its effect to banish a card from your hand or field to then draw 2 cards. Additionally, if it's destroyed by the opponent, well, then you get to add back a banished mutant monster from your banished pile to hand. Now, you guys know me, I opened a lot, and I mean a lot, of Secret Slayers. I'm a big fan of the Eldritch archetype. It really reminds me of older, slower, classic Yu-Gi-Oh! And I have to admit, Mist could be a big issue for this deck. Picture this, you're playing Eldritch, opponent has Mist on board, you activate Conquistador, you attempt to pop it, then your opponent chains to draw 2 cards, then they get to add back a banished monster. Also, it has more attack than Eldritch, so your opponent, or rather you, would have to bring Eldritch back to run it over properly. So it could just be a big issue for the deck. That said, let's talk about the third big boss monster, Arsenal. Mutant Arsenal is a fire machine with 3000 attack and 1000 defense. It cannot be targeted with trap cards, and when your opponent activates a monster effect, you can banish a card from your hand or field to then target and banish any monster on the field. So it's essentially a nifty quick effect on the opponent's turn, and to kind of put it in context, let's say you have it on board. Your opponent, they summon Halqifibrax, they try to summon a monster from deck. You now have the option not to negate, but to get rid of that Halq. So while they get that new monster, they do lose their Link 2, and that means that Link climbing or really going through their general combos is going to be a lot more difficult. It's also worth noting that, like all of the boss monsters, it does have the benefit of, if it's destroyed by the opponent, you do get to add back a banished spell from your banished pile to your hand. So those are the notable monsters in the main deck. We'll talk about one more later, but I do want to talk about the extra deck, which has some absolutely incredible artwork. As a lot of you know, I actually paint for a living, and so seeing things like this, it gets me really excited. Mutant Synthesis is a psychic water with 2500 attack, and it requires 2 mutants with different attributes. If it's fusion summoned, you can target a card on the field and destroy it, so it's pretty decent at going second, and if your opponent activates a card or effect, you can actually make it unaffected by that same type of card, that being monster, spell, or trap, for the rest of the turn. This effect is a quick effect, so your opponent, they'll essentially have to activate 2 monster negations to actually stop it, because when they activate the first, you chain the effect, it is therefore unaffected by monster effects, and then they would have to chain the second negation to get rid of it. So it's essentially a very easy out to something like Herald Savage, baiting that entire board. Another neat little interaction is that it could actually force out double Fogblade, which is something you might actually see with the new Phantom Knight support and Rusty coming off the list. Now the second fusion is Mutant ULTIMUS, and he's a big boy. ULTIMUS is a Psychic Dark with 3500 attack and 3000 defense. He requires 3 of the big mutant monsters, but there is a trap we'll talk about in a second which makes summoning him significantly easier. That said, he can negate and banish a monster, spell, or trap by banishing a mutant card of that same type from your hand, field, or graveyard. Also, if he's destroyed by the opponent, you can add up to 3 banished mutant cards, one of each type, back to your hand from your banished pile. I personally think that the smaller fusion will see a lot more play, but it is 2020, we all love an Omni-Negate, and the trap again does make summoning it significantly easier. So, let's talk about Mutant Cry. Mutant Cry, the trap, lets you summon a mutant fusion by shuffling back materials from your field, grave, and or banished pile. This is also really cool because it allows you to summon Synthesis on your opponent's turn to pop a card for an extra disruption. Pre-ban list, I was actually playing a lot of Infernobles, and I really fell in love with the interaction of Roland and Charles to pop a card on the opponent's turn after setting up, and this is giving me a very similar vibe, with the added bonus that, you get the protection of Synthesis. Now, let's jump into the spells. Mutant Fusion allows you to fusion summon a mutant by banishing materials from your hand or field. However, if your opponent activated a card or effect that turn, you can actually use up to 1 monster each from your deck and graveyard. This essentially means that if you're going first and your opponent hand traps you, you can activate the spell for, significantly less of a cost. And if you're going second, if your opponent negates your starter, then you can activate the spell, summon Synthesis, and just start ripping your opponent's board apart. Which leads me to kind of one of my larger thoughts on this archetype. It's really cool how non-Dyro dependent it is. You can go first, summon one of the big boss monsters, set up your trap to summon the disruption. Or, alternatively, you can go second and use a lot of these cards to just rip the opponent's board apart. It's really, really cool, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it progresses. That said, on to the next card. The next spell I want to talk about is Mutant Evolution Lab, and it's pretty versatile. It's a field spell that provides you with an extra summon from your hand or grave, allows you to fix your hand, and gives your mutants a little bit of an attack boost. It also works in conjunction with your final monster, Mutant GB88, which allows you to special one of the big boys from your grave or banish pile during the opponent's turn. The final spell is Mutant Blast, an equip card that can only be put on Beast, Mist, or Arsenal. It banishes opponent's special summon monsters that battle with the equipped mutant, and it allows you to banish itself to then send the equipped mutant to grave in order to special a different level 8 mutant from your hand or deck. At this point, I'd like to remind you that the starter will actually search you the trap, the fusion spell, the field spell, really all of it. So it's very consistent, but it actually gets a lot more consistent with the help of a previously released spell, which I'm about to grab out. Let me grab some cards. Emergency Teleport was a spell released in Duelist Genesis and was actually a staple in one of my favorite formats of all time, that being Teledad. Ryan Kane and I, we actually still talk about that deck like all the time. But with that said, this card is incredible in Mutants because it can special both of your starters. If you open with one of these and one of your starters, you can effectively search both a monster and a speller trap in your opening turn, making it very, very effective for just general card advantage and fixing your hand to be exactly what you want it to be. With that said, I do want to talk about additional other synergies. Another archetype this can work in conjunction with is Nemesis. I have wanted to make a deck around this archetype forever, but the Arch Nemesis cards require different attributes or different types to summon them, which most of the mutants are. The little guys also act as extenders while putting your mutant resources back into your deck, which is pretty cool synergy. Also, on the note of the Arch Nemesis cards, they came out in Eternity Code, so you may already have them. Another one of the little ones came out in Rise of the Duelist, again a very readily available pack, so you can still find these fairly easily. And I personally haven't put a list together, but I definitely think something cool could be there. I did also want to note that none of the mutants lock you into mutants or psychics, so you can still have a very free extra deck. Summoning cards like IP, Appaloosa, Boral Sword, Access Code Talker, another fantastic card out of Eternity Code, and there's just a lot of option there. But with all of that said, I really wanted to note, I missed you guys. It feels like it's been forever since the end of Return to Yu-Gi-Oh! I miss the conversation. I miss just making videos, and I have been in the background making some videos. We are going to start 2 new series very soon, one of which is very high production, very nostalgia driven, another much more comical, but quite fun. So make sure that you hit the notification bell so you do get to see when those are actually released. Also, follow me on Twitter for little updates. I'd also like to know that if you are new to the channel and this is the first video you're watching, then you can go and check out my first series returning to Yu-Gi-Oh! I think episode 1 actually just cracked 100,000 views, which is absolutely wild, and it's a series I'm very proud of. It's high production vlogging that kind of documents my journey through returning to the game, and I think it can be a lot of fun for a lot of you. So go check that out if you're interested. I'd also just like to end this with a big thank you to Konami. You sponsored this video. You reached out despite the fact, again, that this channel has 20 videos, this now being the 21st. Absolutely crazy. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm honored, and I hope I did the archetype some justice. With that said, thank you. I hope you're staying safe, taking care. I will see you soon, and peace and love, guys.